different initiatives that we're working on from UN Women. I am originally from Colombia, but spent the last 4.5 years working in Guatemala. And I will share with you some of the lived experiences of women around the world and seek with you ways in which we can join forces and be inspired, as is the objective of today. Thank you very much, Kristin, for this wonderful invitation. And I would like to start with a video for us to see what's happening with women around the world.
We know that almost 500 million women are illiterate in the world today. And this is the trend that has not changed in the last 20 years. There is an urgent need to drive solutions, especially for women who have missed out on education, and ensure that they too are able to access decent work opportunities.
This is me. This is my story.
Yeah, my life hasn't been that great.
मोर खाली गोटे मन भितर थिला जे पाठ पढिछि माने मोर आ किछि नै
que acabé mi primaria y me casé a los 14 años y trunqué mis estudios.
Yo siempre me daba el tiempo en mis hijos, no me dedicaba a mí.
فتاة في قرية ما في فرص عمل في القرى.
In conflict, displacement, and crisis, with high rates of poverty, violence, or discriminatory social norms, or in peaceful settings, there are many obstacles that prevent women from accessing education opportunities. UN Women and the BHP Foundation have partnered to break this trend. Women in 6 countries have joined UN Women's Second Chance Education and Vocational Learning Program to test solutions for bringing women who have fallen behind back to education and into decent employment. The evidence base for what works will provide a global model for scaling local solutions to economically empower women in a variety of contexts around the world.
शिक्षा का महत्व सिर्फ हमारे जिंदगी की में नौकरी करना ही नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं हमारे परिवार को भी संभालना, परिवार को एक सही रास्ते पे लेके चलना, बच्चे को सही गाइडलाइन देना.
These are the early results of women who have started the journey with the Second Chance program. They dream about starting their own businesses.
أنا بحياتي ما خيطت وتعلمت الخياطة هون وصارت الخياطة عندي يعني هي الأساسية والحمد لله وصرت أخذ منها راتب وحبيتها كثير يعني الخياطة.
C'est ici que je viens installer ma table boutique et le marché passe bien.
They dream about improving their skills.
احنا اليوم تعلمنا كيف نقص البايبات بشكل دقيق 100%. فكان إشي عظيم جدا.
Te sientes bien y todo, y eso te da motivación a que tú sigas aprendiendo.
I said to myself, I have to learn digital things because I don't want to be dependent on anybody, especially for your personal things. Oh, they will know your secrets.
They dream about securing decent jobs.
Empecé a buscar alguna forma de mejorar. De manera académica o de manera personal.
Comencé el programa de oportunidad con intenciones de nivelar los estudios, pero me di cuenta que había otras opciones que era empleabilidad y emprendimiento.
उस टाइम मुझे नहीं पता था कि मुझे एजुकेटर का पद मिल जाएगा, तो सर ने बताया मुझे कि आपकी सैलरी 6,000 होगी, तो मैं उस टाइम बहुत खुश हुई कि कहाँ मैं 1,000-1,500 रुपए और कहाँ मेरी 6,000 सैलरी.
They dream about achieving their true potential.
In this short time, I've already achieved so much.
Es una segunda oportunidad a la vida, a estudiar, a todas las oportunidades que en la juventud, en la niñez dejamos. Ahorita estamos aprovechándolo.
El programa me ha ayudado más que nada en confiar en mí, el poder seguir adelante, el tratar de avanzar un poco más de lo que era.
You can do. There is nothing impossible.
Yo quiero que mucha mujer escuche, mucha mujer sepa que tiene esa capacidad de sobresalir y aprender.
Thank you very much. And here in this room is the manager of the Second Chance Education Program, Ana Parini, in the back, if you have questions after this presentation, because what we need is to take to scale these kinds of initiatives and support each other in wherever the gaps are. I am very proud that this is one of the initiatives of UN Women where the majority of the funding comes from the private sector, which means that all of us can make a difference, a very substantial difference in women's lives. I want to share with you that in our research from the COVID response task forces around the world, only 24% had women represented. So imagine the great opportunity that COVID has presented, as the previous speakers have shown us, but the COVID pandemic demonstrated that the situation for women and girls is still not where we want it to be. 25 years after the Beijing Platform of Action, the fourth conference for women, which identified 12 areas of advancement. And we have seen such little progress. We have majority of countries with legislation, national action plans on ending violence against women, on the importance of accessing credit, of accessing education, but these legislations are not implemented. They don't necessarily have the budgets that are required. They're not evaluated, and majority of times they are implemented by the women's machineries, which are the more dependent on resources, the least funded, and the ones that had limited political clout. So these are the kinds of things that we need to make sure we address if we want to build a peaceful world, if we want to make the connections to ensure that women can participate, can transform the world as we need. So the pandemic has acted as a big revealer. In other words, the virus has exploded and worsened the inequalities, including gender inequalities, that were there all along. 54 million women lost their jobs between 2019 and 2020, but even before COVID, there had been barely a change in women's labor force participation in the last 3 years. The closure of schools and daycares has pushed care back into the homes and onto women's shoulders. But even before COVID, women were doing 3 times as much unpaid care as men, with serious implications for their economic autonomy, education, and health. Coming from Guatemala, we saw in one of the surveys that women were working 13 hours more than men every day, which means a second job, a full-time job, compared to men that were supporting only 3 hours a day. The pandemic has led to an increase of domestic violence, as we have heard, but listen to this, child marriage. The calculations by our colleagues from the UN are that child marriage is one of the effects that we're going to see as more families lose their income, as the need to protect girls, child marriage will increase. Harmful practices that we thought were long ago, long ago completed, we will see more and more girls forced into marriage, which means truncating their education, their possibilities for ending a relationship that, for example, ends in violence, their participation, and of course, they will not be in the seats of decision making. But we already knew that 1 in 3 women will experience violence in their lifetime. So when we think about the recovery for COVID-19, we need to recover the ground that has been lost on gender equality and women's rights by tackling these long-standing challenges. We put together as UN Women a feminist plan for sustainability and social justice that looks at 3 main issues: jobs, care, and climate. So I don't want to repeat what has already been said about jobs and the potential, but I do want to mention our opportunities in terms of care. And this is an invisible topic that's gaining more and more prominence. Care is a public good that generates benefits and extends beyond the individual care recipients to societies at large and into the future. Societies need to stop free riding on women's unpaid and underpaid labor and collectively assume the costs of quality care for all. A care-led recovery is needed with investments in the care economy to support women's re-entry into the labor force, the well-being of children and older people, and the creation of decent work. But I want to call your attention on the opportunities we have on climate. We urgently need to transition our economies into environmental sustainability. We need to step up on climate finance commitments because we see more and more agreements signed, but we don't see the resources, and the majority of the resources are not going to women and their organizations. Women leaders in local communities are spearheading innovative approaches to promote sustainable energy transitions in agroecology, which protect local ecosystems and are based on indigenous knowledge. Governments must support their efforts so that these models can go to scale, but as we have seen, we can also support from every place where we stand in the world. So it's not easy. It's a different way of thinking. And when we put women at the center, when we think about gender equality, women's empowerment, it's a lived reality for women and girls, things start to make sense from participation, access to resources, and in decision making. And that's what we are proposing to work together towards. So a social contract that should be based on the universal human rights framework. And we are working here every day with the Human Rights Council. There are many resolutions on the right to a clean environment, the right to work, the impact on COVID. These are all resolutions that should be implemented, and we can follow on all their recommendations. States also need to be able to mobilize maximum available resources. Austerity measures we have seen that have a great impact on many generations. So investing on education, as we heard before, investing on access to jobs and to finance is a way forward. So we want to break the cycle of economic insecurity, environmental destruction, and exclusionary politics. And this requires all of us to be aware of, yes, there are all these challenges. They were there before. They have been exacerbated. They're more visible, but we have more opportunities now. So, as we saw in the video, let's think about how we can support changing, transforming lives, of a life that perhaps didn't start the right way, of a woman who was forced into marriage at 13 years of age, that by the time she's 40, she may have 3-4 children to care for, that she might be subjected to violence, as it's always the case. Understanding all these cycles and the connections that we can make to connect to new jobs, to new technology, to new discussions, but also to demand the participation of women, of young girls, and of course of young women in all parts of decision making. So let's think about, as a source of peace building, as a source of reconstruction, as a source of thinking in a new way, to put women at the center, and the answers will come through for us.
Thank you so much.